Now, I'm not a petrol head. I'm no expert. I can't fix a car. I can't tell you what make or model a car is. But since a young age, with most boys, cars are a fascination. And so when my dad offered to take me to watch real racing live, I jumped at the chance. He took me to the Wimbledon dog tracks where they were doing stock car racing, sprint racing, but the thing that really stood out for me was the banger racing. Full contact motorsports, where if you couldn't get past the guy in front of you, you simply rammed him off the road. And a big bit of the fun of that was most nights the competitions ended with a demolition derby. All versus all, fight to the finish, one man left standing, or one car left running. So come 1995, when I'm wandering around the shops with my parents, I happen to spot a small game case for the PlayStation 1 that reads Destruction Derby. You can imagine how excited I was. The live thrill of full contact racing in the palm of my hands at home. This was going to be awesome. The game itself was published by Psygnosis, but developed by Reflection Studios. More commonly known now for the Driver franchise, Far Cry 3 and Tom Clancy's The Division. Besides the PlayStation 1, the game was ported to MS-DOS, where it featured fewer racers and overall worse graphics and worse sound, and was eventually ported to the Sega Saturn, but suffered from graphical downgrading and really just wasn't at the quality of the PlayStation 1. That's not to say that this game looked incredibly pretty at all. I mean, this was no Gran Turismo. But the game wasn't going for realistic, it was going for fun. And that fun came from the gameplay. The biggest element that this game had over all others at this point in time was the damage mechanics. Each car was assigned 10 areas in which it could take damage. And over the course of racing, if you were hit enough times, these would go from green to orange to red before finally flashing and going black, meaning it had completely broken. You lose your four wheels, you're stuck. You lose wheels on one side of the car, hope you like turning in one direction forevermore. You smash out the front of the car, the radiator goes, you start seeing steam before eventually one more hit and boom, the engine is bust, black smoke rises and you are out of the competition. Now that's not to say you had to race in this style and aggressively take out other cars. There was an option to do stock car racing, which featured the same damage mechanics, but the idea was not to cause as much mayhem as possible, but rather simply to get round the track. I can't remember very many people actually playing that mode, but it was there if you wanted it. You see, the meat of the game was wrecking racing. The idea of this mode was not only to get round the track in first place, but also to cause as much mayhem along the way as possible. See, in stock car racing, you ran a race, the higher up the leaderboard you got and the higher the podium position you achieved, the more points you were rewarded and the better off you'd be. But wrecking racing, yeah, it did award you a few points for coming in first place and second and third, but if you were having trouble getting up the front, you were better off trying to attack other cars. If you hit a car and spun it 90 degrees, 180, or even a full 360, you'd get a lot more points than simply trying to drive around them. And why would you want to drive around them anyway? I mean, with a cast of 19 characters, 20 including your own, on every single race, you start to learn these characters and start to learn their driving behaviours and start to hate individuals and really want to just drive them off the tracks. And this is helped in championship mode, where all the drivers are dividing up into 5 leagues, each with 4 races in, and are assigned a specific colour roof, so you know who's in your league and who best to take out at any given moment to try and increase your chances of winning the league and progressing to the top of the table. Come to the end of a season in wrecking racing mode and you'll also be rewarded with one of the most satisfying things you'll ever play on the PS1, a demolition derby. That's right, a full-on, no holds barred fight to the finish using motor vehicles. This was innovative for me, this was fun, this was amazing. Same rules apply for wrecking racing, but there were no laps. Survive and destroy were your 2 objectives. Spin your opponent's cars out, wreck them, and hope to God that you do not die first. More often than not, you'd find yourself completely destroyed before you even started. But hey, that's half the fun of it. And with a selection of 3 vehicles to play with, the game's difficulty settings if you will, there's plenty of fun to be had, either smashing your way through wrecking racing, driving the fastest in stock car mode, or just simply having a go in demolition mode and destroying your opponents, because you can. Now, if you were lucky enough to have a friend with a PlayStation they were quite happy to port about with a second TV nearby, you could link up the two consoles and have yourselves some multiplayer fun. Now, okay, I'll admit this game isn't perfect. We've touched on the graphics before, and yeah, they're kind of blocky and they're not really, pushing the boundaries of the technology, but they did suffice. The gameplay itself really only takes place in two planes. The cars never actually leave the road, no matter how much you hit them. And then there's the tracks. Most of them are your standard fare, simply a big loop with a couple of swerves thrown in to try and cause issues, but nothing really major stands out, with the exception of Crossroads and Cactus Creek, both tracks of which contain intersections where cars fly into you from the side and cause all kinds of mayhem. Also, if you're a fan of simulation racing, stay away from this game. This is arcade racing and not even at its best. Controls jump from tight to loose in a matter of moments, and with the added damage mechanic, it can be really hard to stay on top of it and keep your car going in the direction you want it to. Now, after coming back to this game after being away from it for so many years, I fully expected to hate it. I thought my memories were rose-tinted, and that the love of this game was me being young and naive and not really knowing what a good video game was. However, I'm more than happy to say I was completely wrong. This game is still tons of fun even now. Okay, yeah, there's not a lot of depth to it, and trying to get two players running on this game is such a nightmare it's hardly worth the hassle. But the gameplay itself is so rewarding. The crunches, the smashing, and just that feeling of satisfaction when you take Suicide Squad from the front of that pack and ram her off the road. It's just so satisfying. The game itself is addictive. I want to get my black roof. I don't want to be stuck in the yellow roof section in Division 4. I want to be Division 1. I want to have the black roof, and I want to destroy every single car that comes in my way. Something about the reward for simply smashing into other cars, it's something primal, which is odd considering Evolution I don't think ever really had any intention of automotive destruction in it, but whatever. Regardless, this game may be very basic, may be very simple, but for its time it made a big impact. It was a big enough hit for it to spawn 3 sequels and 2 copycat games, and won over my heart. Can I recommend this game? Don't pick up the DOS version, don't pick up the Saturn version, but by all means, pick up the PlayStation 1 version. Even if you only play it for 10 minutes, it's still going to be worth your time. You may not love it in the same way that I did, but I guarantee you're going to have a little bit of fun out of this. Even if it's just getting that one rare 360 hit on an opponent, you'll like it. Just a little.